The councillors in attendance are Mayor Harding, Councillor Jonnick, Councillor Doyle, Councillor Milligan and myself, Councillor Madsen. We have an apology for Councillor Kate Kunzelman today. We'll deal with that matter first. There's a leave of absence, so I move that a leave of absence be granted for Councillor Kate Kunzelman, seconded by Mayor Harding. Any discussion on that? No. Put it to the vote that a leave of absence be granted for Councillor Kunzelman. Those for? That's unanimous and carried. Does any members of the committee have any declarations of interest to make today? None? All right. In terms of business outstanding, we have the matter laid on the table about the Studiosity subscription renewal. Are we seeking to bring that off the table today? Any committee member have an opinion on that? All right.
Chair, I might be incorrect, but I thought that one was laid on the table for 2 months. I'm getting a nod from our GM, so apologies. We'll leave that one.
All right.
The recommendation will be to leave that one on the table for another month.
I wasn't aware that we put times on things on the table. It is there in the agenda, I suppose. So. Anyway, I'll accept that.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the confirmation of minutes. Would any members of the committee like to move that? Moved by Councillor Doyle, seconded by Councillor Milligan. Any discussion on those minutes this morning? I'll put it to the vote then, that we accept the minutes. Those for? It's unanimous and carried. Item 2 is our first officer's report for today, the iVolve project quarterly status update. Would we like to speak to the relevant officer on this one? No? We'll take it as read. Would any member of the committee like to move that? Councillor Doyle, seconded by Mayor Harding. Any discussion?
We're just moving A.
Human rights, yes. If you'd like to, CEO.
Thank you, Chair. I thought I had removed this recommendation on the approval process, but please, yes, there's no need for recommendation B to be there, in my opinion, as it is a receive and note report recommendation to the committee.
All right, we'll just move A on its own and ignore B if that's okay with the committee. Would anybody like to move that recommendation A's moved? Moved, yes. Mayor Harding, seconded by Councillor Doyle. No, any discussion, Mayor?
Just briefly, Chair, if I may say, just appreciate the approach of how this project is going. Obviously, I'm keeping a very close eye on it. So, yeah, thank you for the report.
Any further comments? I'll put the matter to the vote that the report be received and contents noted. Those for? That's unanimous and carried. Item 3 on today's agenda is particularly interesting. It's 16062 Ipswich City Council Animal Management Centre. Does anybody have any questions on this matter? No? Would anybody like to move that recommendations A through D be accepted? Councillor Jonnick's moved and seconded by Councillor Doyle. I can't recall what's in the confidential parts of the report because I haven't opened up my laptop yet. There is a saving on this one, isn't there, compared to the current arrangement?
My understanding is yes.
Yeah, so I think that's a good outcome. That's all I was going to add in discussion. If anybody else has got a comment to make, that would be appreciated.
I think, Chair, just apart from the savings, I know that this has been contentious in the past with who holds this contract. And after reading the tender evaluation and the report, the confidential report, I can sort of say that certainly, in my view, that due process occurred, that the organisation was very ethical in how they conducted the tender and in coming to that decision. So I'll be happy to support this when it goes to the vote.
Yep, I concur with those comments. Does anybody else wish to speak on the matter? No. Well, it's been moved and seconded, so we'll put it to the vote. Those in favour of accepting recommendations A through D? That's unanimous and carried. Item 4 for today is the procurement matter for overdrive subscription for e-resources. Do any members of the committee have questions for the relevant officer on this? So in this matter, I'll just read out the recommendation because it's a bit unique. Recommendation A is that Council resolve it is satisfied that the exception in 235A of the Local Government Regulation 2012 applies and that Overdrive Australia Property Limited is the only supplier reasonably available to provide library e-resources. Then obviously recommendation B is to enter into a contract. Do any members of the committee want to move this? Councillor Doyle, seconded by Councillor Jonik. Anything to add in discussion here?
I think I just wanted to clarify if this was a retrospective or not. Let's talk about how we've migrated to Overdrive, or that was my only.
So you would like to talk to the officer?
Yeah, is that okay? Thank you,
Mr.
Chair.
White?
Richard White, Manager of Procurement. So yes, this is a novation of an existing agreement.
Right.
So it's rereading it this morning in prep. I went, it's probably not clear enough that it's a novation.
Thank you.
And a little bit retrospective, yes, because it was identified, they've changed, and we went, we're going to have to novate that, and because we don't have an appropriate avenue to directly source with them, we're going to have to take that to council. So a little bit retrospective and largely a novation of an existing agreement that's previously been approved and budget approved and all those kind of items.
Mr. Moore, I think a little bit retrospective, a bit like being a little bit pregnant. It either is or it isn't.
Retrospective.
And yeah, for good governance, we need to make sure that these things don't happen again. And I guess, what are you doing with regards to your full procurement schedule to make sure that this doesn't happen again?
ICT has been difficult for identifying all the different agreements throughout council, and I think ICT is on a journey as well. So the centralisation of procurement, we quickly and easily identified all the capital and many of the service agreements. The existing ICT procurement team, when I started 18 months ago, had both left. There was no handover, and secondarily, at that point, there was a very decentralised approach. So each business unit would buy their ICT contracts. So sometimes we've had a little bit of trouble having the last flush out, and I think we're hoping by the end of this financial year, now that we've done a full budget cycle, we've caught all of these ones that weren't in our contracts register for identification in this way.
Thank you, Mr. White. Thank you, Chair.
Any further questions?
I did, thank you, Chair. I was just going to add to what Mr. White has said, that the Chief Information Officer also did a collection of information across departments, across branch managers, to identify software that was in use, with that very intent of ensuring that we, for multiple reasons, had a better capture of all of the various software that was in place across council. So we're much better positioned, in addition to what Richard White has said.
Thank you, and I'm sure iVolve will pick up things as well.
It has assisted as well, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you,
Chair.
Mr. White. Any discussion? Well, I'll put matters A and B to the vote. Those in favour? That's unanimous and carried. We'll move on to item 5, the new trustee lease over reserve for recreation purposes to Australian Crawl Property Limited over 256 Brisbane Road, Bundamba. Do any members of the committee have questions? Mayor Harding, I'd call on the relevant officer.
Good afternoon, Kerry Parrott, Senior Property Officer.
Hi, Ms. Parrott. I think we've seen these before, where it looks to me like we've used the wrong way to lease, and we're just fixing that up. Or
Yes, that's correct. Because it's trust land,
Yes.
we need to enter into a trustee lease rather than the existing management agreement that Australian Crawl are currently on.
Right. So will this have an impact on the management of that company for their smooth running or? Any?
No, not at all.
No. So none of the terms and conditions have changed?
No, they're under the same terms and conditions, and the tenant is well aware of why we're
Okay.
terminating the existing management agreement and entering into a trustee lease.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any others like this on our books?
I believe we do have a couple more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Perrott.
All right, do any members of the committee agree with moving recommendations A through D? Would anybody like to move that? Mayor Harding, seconded by Councillor Milligan. Any discussion? Mayor?
For May Chair, I guess as part of this new council and addressing governance and things like that, these things are going to crop up. Thank you very much to the council officers for being open, and if we could do anything to minimise the impact on the other party, would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Any further comments or discussion? No. I'll put the matter to the vote. Recommendation A through D. Those in favour? That's unanimous and carried. We now have item 6, tenure arrangements over the Springfield Central Sports and Community Hall located at 134A Parkland Drive, Springfield Central. Any questions for the relevant officer? Mayor Harding.
Kerry Parrott, Senior Property Officer.
And Ms. Perrott, just succinctly, what's this report requesting?
So this is a very minor amendment. When council resolved to enter into this lease, we resolved to enter into a sublease. We resolved to enter into a sublease, and the wording should have been a sublease,
Right.
because council is in effect subleasing from the Department of Education already.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Perrott.
Thank you.
Just noting here that this is just a report be received and the contents noted, just to keep us aware of what's happening. No new resolution was required, but the report's certainly helpful. Would any members of the committee like to move that the report's accepted? Mayor Harding, seconded Councillor Johnnick. Any discussion? I'll put the matter to the vote that the report be received and the contents noted. Those for? That's unanimous and carried. Last item today is the repeal of previous council decision for proposed new telecommunications lease to Vodafone Network Property Limited, located at 81 Stewart Street, Goodna. Do any members of the committee have questions on this one? Mayor Harding, call on the officer.
Kerry Parrott, Senior Property Officer.
Hi, Ms. Perrott. Obviously, we're not going to collect rent here. Had we made any commitments based on the income that we're going to get from this?
We had an agreement from Vodafone to pay a rent. However, council attempted on multiple occasions to have Vodafone execute the lease, and they have not, and they've since contacted council to repeal the decision as they've changed their mind on the tower location, as there is another telecommunications provider that's interested in that site.
So what's the best deal for council?
Well, Vodafone don't actually want the tower there anymore.
And their lease runs out they've got 4 5-year leases?
Yeah, so this is a new lease. In the original council decision, council had resolved to enter into 4 5-year leases, which is it's not in line with the Planning Act 2006. Because any lease over 10 years over part of land is supposed to be reconfigured. There is case law to say that we shouldn't actually be doing that.
So they're not wanting to stay at Stewart Street, but they're looking at another property at Jones Road
Yes.
instead.
Yes. No, so that was in addition. When the original committee report was resolved a number of years ago, Vodafone requested 2 sites, and they've since come back and said they only want 1 site now instead of 2.
And have they been paying that $19,000 a year?
No, because they haven't actually got an executed lease.
Right, so it's never executed?
No, no.
Okay,
No.
okay. Thank you. That was-
Any further questions? Thank you, Mr. Pratt. I'll read on the microphone.
Sorry. Thank you, Chair. I was
It's been on the whole time as well.
going to try to, seeking to add just the point that I mentioned there, but just to be clear that, yeah, the lease hasn't been executed. So to your question, Mayor, through you, Chair, we've not collected that rent. To the question of, was that rent allocated to any other purpose, I'm going to venture not. And I guess it's a lost opportunity to collect rent, but we're not necessarily directly suffering as a result of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Would any members of the committee like to move the recommendation? Councillor Doyle, seconded by Councillor Milligan. Any further comments or discussion? Put the matter to the vote that the recommendation is accepted. Those in favour? That's unanimous and carried. There's no notices of motion or matters arising. With that being the case, I'm happy to call the meeting closed at 1:20 p.m.
Thank you. Next one at 1:30.